the area still work their farm, that their life experience would benefit us. I mean, that's a significant factor for us. So we believe but the intention would be that we would be working with the local organizations to try to get at least 75% of the employees there to be regional. We may have to bring some farm management people initially from outside, but the goal would be that this would basically be a local farm run by folks from the local community. But I can't tell you right now that there are people in the local community that have done this before that would have that skill set yet, but I can promise you that if we have people that have a desire to do that, we would train them to do that, because our goal would be that they know the community. I mean, I'm a local dude. I believe in local food and local farming, so.
How much people be paid? I mean, you're talking about training and being somewhat skilled and what you
And I apologize, I probably can't hear.
what would your pay scale be? You're talking about people needing some degree of training and being somewhat skilled.
Yeah, so again, there'd be different tiers. We start out at livable wage, so whatever the livable wage is, I do not believe in minimum wage. I mean, adamantly don't believe in it, especially with people who are raising food. So we'd start at a livable wage, and then their skill sets would go up. But I mean, the goal would be, again, to have eventually about 20% of the people in a kind of a management situation with the farms. We're going to be raising 3 different crop types, actually 4. So the goal would be eventually to have management over each of those crop types, because you're doing greens, you're doing herbs, you're doing mushrooms, and you're doing vines, and all of those really should be specialized with people that understand the differences and the nuances of growing those different crops. So we would start people at a look. So your local folks, local administration would tell us what the livable wage is for this area, for that category, and that's what we would start them out for sure.
On your website, you give the number 35 as the job. I guess that's changed.
Well, we actually, if you incorporate the whole project, which would include the growing and the agritourism side, it's going to be 60. So what we did is we basically put in a plan of what it would take to actually be on the production side of it. But there's actually a significant, because our plan is primarily to reach out to the local schools. The goals of this is to tie that whole farm to school movement into a reality, so people don't just quit talking about it, but it's a real thing. And so that would basically involve 60, when it's fully operational, it would involve at least 60 full-time people. Yeah.
That 35 on the website might have been our initial estimate for the building.
Yeah.
Excluded the greenhouses.
Yeah.
That's probably.
How much revenue you'll be generating? I mean,
How much revenue? Was that the question? I apologize. From a production standpoint, if we were fully operational as far as everything was planned out, to about 2 acres. So that would give you more or less about $3 million a year in revenue from the production side of it. The agritourism side, it's hard to know, because it takes a few years to build that up. But sites that are similar to this in other places that I'm familiar with, they can generate anywhere from $2 to $5 million with agritourism. I mean, it's a fairly significant situation. It'll bring quite a bit of economy in. We pretty much have everything sold, pre-sold. So when we go into production, we already have contracts for it all to go out. So it's not a matter of we're going to be growing things and then trying to find a buyer for them. It would aggregate with a larger group as far as production capacity goes.
do you all have other locations?
I'm sorry?
Do you have other locations in the country where you can do
I
this?
do quite a bit of this, so I'm in multiple locations, and I'm involved with some fairly large national contracts, and so they're always looking for a regional supplier. So this would actually be a regional supplier to some of those contracts. So we would join Kentucky Proud. The idea would be, as much as we possibly could, to get the Kentucky product into a regional distribution center, so it could stay as close. I mean, your product would go to Indiana, Ohio, and Kentucky, but the idea would be grow regionally for a distributor. or multiple distributors, actually.
Any other questions?
I know you've got to have parking on the site, and I know, so you've got, 9 parking spaces that are called for, which that's a lot, and that generates runoff as well. And like at the courthouse parking lot's really bigger, I think, than what's needed for the business that takes place there at the Justice Center. And from what I hear, there's some problems with runoff in the neighborhood. So with this, the amount of paving that would be needed here, how would that runoff from that be handled as far as in the city?
Yeah, I'm Jack Lloyd with the Commissioner Functions. All the parking lots will be curved and drained internally to a system, so you're not gonna have, water's not gonna sheet off and run off on your neighbor's property. It's all gonna be collected and handled locally, and it's gonna be distributed into the system, which is a challenge. A lot of these around here, there's surface parking, and you just run either into the street or into the system, so there's no way to contain it. So we're gonna make sure that, again, with the continuation of the gutter, the curbs around the parking lot, everything will be contained within the site. Yeah. So we're gonna handle both the quantity and quality. We have, what we call bioswales on site, so as the water comes off the parking lot, it's gonna have salts and things like that, and well, they're collected in a bioswale, and it's handled with the plants that are there, so that stuff doesn't flush into the system as well. So we have multiple layers of dealing with both the quantity and the quality of the stormwater.
Can I elaborate on that, Jim? Sure. As far as the stormwater runoff, our regulations will require that they submit a stormwater report. That's what I'd like to make as part of the condition tonight, because they're not required to do it ahead of time. It's kind of it's a difficult report, so it's something that they'd probably like to see approval of first, but we'll calculate stormwater drainage prior to construction, and then they will size these retention basins to accommodate that the new blacktop, and we'll call them pervious surfaces. They will go into this detention basins, and will distribute out. And the calculations are supposed to be similar to what they were pre-construction. So anything that's covered in hard surface that's impervious after construction will just be retained in these swales and will be distributed out into the streams at the same rate it was when the vegetation was there. So.
Any other final questions from the commission? Any public comment? Okay, so, Brian, you have to sign this sheet? You can, all right, Brian. Okay, so, at this time, we will ask members of the public if they want to speak to the commission, any concerns or support, and generally ask them to kind of keep the time brief, like 3 minutes, 5 minutes tops, depending on how many people want to speak. But is there anyone here with prepared comments on behalf of anyone impacted by this project that would like to speak at this time? And if not, if someone would like to, yes,
Yeah, I have two.
okay. What's your name?
Or you said, Jeff, you said it
Hey,
was.
let me mention something real quick. I have to do the minutes. The best thing for each of you when you get up, if you will, come up and stand here, and if you would start with your name first, so I can get it down in the minutes. You said Jeff, you got your name?
Jeff, yes.
Thanks.
First of all, you said it was gonna be organic. So, if it's gonna be funny, but what about the, smell or from like composting or the, dirt, whatever is being used? How is that gonna be handled, or how do you anticipate that being a problem?
Yes, so the, all composting would be off-site. I mean, you're not gonna I apologize, quick question. There won't be any smell per se because the composting will be off-site. Yeah, we would not compost on the site.
All right, that's good. Second question I had was, I saw the plans, but I didn't realize, because one of my questions was, how do you get the semis in and out of the property? So if you're planning on taking the semis up onto Chapel Street and then back around Chapel Street, is that actually feasible? And then two, what about when those truck drivers go into other people's property and cause damage to the property?
Can't speak for what happens. Yeah, or something that might happen in weather. But we have ran, we do, might not make sense to most people, but we have software that we run that actually calculates traffic in a way that that's the largest vehicle. It's
Okay.
and we calculated that it will fit on the curve. It is big coming backward, but comparable to a school bus. They can still make that turn. We've done calculations, it works.
On paper.
So with that being said, though,
If you don't drive a truck, you don't know.
so with that being said, the majority of the traffic, truck traffic we're gonna have is not gonna be semi-trailers. They're gonna be box truck, Cisco-sized trucks that are significantly smaller than a full-size tractor trailer. And so that's really, as I said, we calculated for the maximum, but the majority, I was just talking to Jim about this earlier today. We'll probably have to be 2 years in production before we're even producing enough for a semi-trailer to ever come on site.
Okay,
Yeah,
so since I live right across the street,
Right. No, I get you.
one, the coming onto looks like that's awful narrow, and two, that curve going down and around, but it's
Yeah,
just,
that top corner there.
yeah, it looks, I've seen trucks try to make that, it's not pretty. So that's what, the last question I have is, if you're running the box trucks up and down that street more often, is there gonna be something, some type of compensation, or what's gonna happen if that street gets tore up with the heavier traffic?
Potentially one truck a day.
Okay, so
So-
just asking.
I wouldn't anticipate, when there were school buses there, and it was a school, you're talking 10 or 15 school buses twice a day, in the morning and again in the afternoon. And we're saying one truck a day, 5 days a week, something like that. So 5 trucks a week versus 15 school buses twice a day. So I don't think that would translate to any significant street damage or anything.
I have, thank you.
Anyone else who would like to speak?
My name's Darren Gregg. Just one quick question. I'm not against it, I'm not for it, I'm just kind of neutral. This is actually the first time not the first time I've heard what's going on. It's more or less these people that live in the city are concerned more about it than I am, because I live out in the country. But if this goes over and explodes for you all, this great, grand and everything, do you see any more facilities somewhere in this county? Or is it just focused on that one right there at home. And the next trip would be in, would you move the next facility to Bracken County or Campbell County or Cincinnati, Ohio?
Potentially, because of the, you know, you would, because of the regionality of we're trying to supply locally, if we've got a facility here locally, it wouldn't make sense to build a second facility in the same spot. You want to space them so that your distribution.
That's as big a facility as you would want or need.
Potentially, it really depends on, you know, where the buyers and the distributors are being shipped.
Dan, I want to make sure we're going to share, this is not a production facility. This is not, it's going to produce, but this isn't a production facility. It's not manufacturing, it's agritourism and it's education. 2 acres is education, that's not production. I mean, at least, if this took off like we believe it will with the markets and whatnot, we would need to locate some production facilities for the storage capacities because their numbers are significantly more than we could service out of here. I mean, this gets, I mean, again, this gets a start to get people interested, but the numbers of, the absolute numbers that people, that they're buying on a daily basis, is astounding, and it would fill up, we would go to production facilities to help augment that if that became a situation where it took off really well. I mean, yeah.
Last question. If it works, it's good for everybody, it's fine. But if it doesn't and it flops, are you always gonna walk away? Or are you gonna, what are you gonna do with it? You gonna sell it, let everything fall to pieces, weeds grow up? Or?
Well, that's kind of what's happening to it now.
I'm not denying that.
So that's an interesting question. You know, I'm more of a positive thinker, so I don't really want to think about that. I think with the contracts that we've got set up through Jim and his other facilities that he's operating, I don't think there's much of a chance that it could be a failure. You know, maybe on the tourism side, we don't get quite the tourism we want and things like that. But from the production side, as Jim was saying, the demand for what we're going to do is so far and above what we're actually going to be able to produce. I think we could be at full production and sell every single bit of it easily.
Well, I wish you all well, but the people that live around it and the community, I hope everything goes good for everybody involved.
Great, thank you.
That's all I have to ask. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else that would like to speak?
My name is Sandy Craddock, and I live about 3 houses at 2 properties just right down from Mr. Fugate. And my concern is your exit route is probably going to be right in my front yard or close to it. And also, I noticed on your renderings, the street parking is a lot of cars. And we have an issue now when we're trying to get out of our driveways. There's an issue with car parking there, and I didn't know if that was a city issue we need to take up or it's something that's only part of your city.
I don't think we have located really any street parking. We've tried to put most of the parking on site, so we shouldn't have any street parking that's in
That
fact.
showed up in there.
Yeah.
I think what you're seeing is the existing that's taken out, so it's just in the rendering. So if that's something that, you know, we can work locally, if that's an issue we want to go
What
with.
about the exit onto Chapel?
What was the
The
question?
exit, because you were saying that you would have the exit,
Right.
come in one way and come in the exit, but you're calling the back of the structure.
Right.
That would be probably in my front yard.
How do you mean in your front yard?
The exit to come out on Chapel Street, if you
Right.
come out, it's going to be, I'm going to be facing all that traffic coming out. That's my issue.
Well, the traffic for the trucks or?
For the
Because
trucks.
all of the car parking would be exiting out over here. So only, as we spoke about before, potentially just one truck a day exiting out.
Thank you.
And generally, produce trucks generally would come and pick up between the hours of 4 and 6.
AM.
It'd be very unusual that a produce truck would be at our farm after 6 o'clock in the morning. So most people won't even know the truck's coming down and gone, because they basically, when they come in, they need to pick up because they have to take it back to a DC and dispel it. So it usually comes in between 4 and 6 in the morning.
Is there ever truck that comes in at school
Yeah.
that early in the morning, as it is? that Rumpke would come in at 6 o'clock every morning when I get up.
There is no way to run a farm without activity. No, I'm telling you, that's not possible. I mean, we're doing this for very purpose of having economic activity. That's why we're doing it.
Okay, are there any other questions?
Chairman.
Yeah.
My name is Jean Herring. I live at 413 Main Street, which is up there. Your renderings, my house is right there. I'm in the middle. Yeah. That's me. And your renderings, your beautiful pictures never shows my house, her house, or I don't know if Kara Sue's here, Kara Jo, what's her name? She's not here. Those cars and the 18-foot parking are going to be that far from my bathroom window. It's just, there's too much stuff crammed in 4.4 acres. It's just too much. It's good for Falmouth. It would be good for Falmouth. There's so much land around here. Why didn't you do it someplace else? And it's not right. It just isn't right.
Well, as I spoke earlier with it being a school building and us trying to incorporate
So
some
have the
educational
school
purpose.
building, leave the rest, and have, build your little, what is it, 35,000 square feet of greenhouses. And I tried to find, you said you had a master grower in Rushville, Indiana, and I searched and searched and searched, and I could not find it.
This is him.
Well,
I couldn't find it,
This is
I'm here. I'm not just in rush.
because I was researching to find out what I'm supposed to do. Your cars are gonna be parked in my bathroom, according to the pictures. I haven't said it, because I'm going into them. I have a 6-foot fence that runs between Chapel and Main Street now, is right there. And then how much space is gonna be between your big old fence and the fence, the existing fence?
I mean,
The buffer.
to my knowledge, everything's adhering to the setbacks and whatnot. I don't think that it's as close as you might
Would
anticipate.
you like to buy my house and have it for your master grower? Because I don't want to live in a factory. I put up with baseball, I put up with football, which I really like. And the school, alternative school, and everything. Where the greenhouses are floods now when it rains real hard, because it comes out from the Lincoln River, and that whole area there, the baseball, I've seen it water. And now you're gonna,
Well, that's dampness in the soil, not actual flooding, you mean. The river's not backing up, you're just saying puddles in the area?
no, it comes, there's a little bridge. It's the backwash or something, and then it comes the other direction too. Those trucks, are they going to be running while they're loading and unloading? Because 4 o'clock in the morning is pretty early. For me being so close, and this couple and the other couple, they're renters right now. It is just, it's too much for 4 acres in the city. It's just too much.
Again, I respect your opinion.
I'm from Farmers,
I
but
expect-
Illinois Farmers.
But I'm saying, there's an economic factor here as well, and it's not too much for 4 acres, because to make it economically viable, there's a lot of things that you have to do in a space to make this work. I mean, so we have differences of opinions, and we appreciate that. But again, this isn't something that we've been working on this over a year to try to address all these issues to make this work.
And I just got my letter, what, 3 weeks ago? My letter.
Okay.
I mean,
So we certainly are hearing you, and again, we'll try to take out into consideration that there is a reality to this building, that it could be a very viable situation regionally for this area.
that's a catch-22. It's good for the city of Falmouth, but my property value, what's gonna happen to it?
Well, your property value would probably actually go up, because we're gonna be bringing jobs to the community.
Those
with
cars
these
that are
people.
gonna be parked right there are gonna be parked outside my bathroom window.
I respect your opinion, ma'am, I really do.
And I think it could be good for Falmouth, but it's just not gonna be good for the houses
You're
that
gonna
are
have,
there.
the landscaping, is meant to buffer some of that parking too, so.
And are you going to have, like dorm rooms up there for workers or something on the 3rd floor? There's nobody gonna live in workers.
No, no one would live in the
What's
facility.
gonna be on the 3rd floor?
more, in the classrooms, more planted areas.
Because the rooftop thing in that ice cube looking building,
Right.
there's just not enough space for you to expand from the back of the original building out for those buildings, for the semis to get through, and 18 foot for parking, 18 feet. For 18 years, I have watched the back of that school, because my kitchen window was right there, and my bathroom window will be right up against the fence. There's only 5 feet between the chain link fence now and my house. And then you're gonna have a small area, which I've seen those, and I have copies of those. It's just too much for 4 acres for Falmouth. All the land around here, I realize the school building was there. I enjoyed it when it was a school, and I know it was old, and she's a grand old lady, and I wasn't raised here, I came here in '98. But I think it's just, I disagree, strongly disagree. Martha used to go in and out that door, she worked in that building. There's just not enough room back there, if you expand and build the loading docks, and I agree, I don't think if the trucks will be able to make that, because I've been on it. I just disagree.
Thank you, Mike.
What else do you have to say? I was the only one that went and researched it. They had the answer.
This is a good time to give up Miss Herring as the anonymous citizen complaint.
Yeah, 300,000 in Rushville. I could never find it. I couldn't find it on the internet.
To answer that, Commissioner Hurst, to read that in the minutes one more time, Ms. Herring, she did file a written concern, so I'd like to read it in the minutes again. 1/14/19, she filed a concern with the business impact of the property value of 413 Main Street. Concerns proposed privacy fence will block sun and air flow, and she'd like to have clarification on hours of operation of truck traffic, which I believe we've
Yeah,
provided.
4 o'clock in the morning.
And then she'd also like to know, would you like to still know, Ms. Herring, as far as employment, recruitment, and retention? Is that still a concern of yours?
Well, if you have a living wage, as you say, I don't know what the living wage is, I work for school. And I couldn't live on what I earn because I'm in transportation. I just don't know. It's hard because we're so mobile. Anybody that works leaves. This is a bedroom community. This may bring in tourism. Kincaid did. The place was packed over there whenever there was a play. That was 1 day a week, or, like 3 days or something. There's so much land around here. I just don't understand why you're packing all this. We have to rezone. If it doesn't go over and it's rezoned for business, we don't know what could go in there. I don't know the rules and regulations of, if somebody wants to put a business, if it just goes in, I don't know. I don't know that. But I am terribly concerned because of how close the three of us, our 3 houses, and then the people on Chapel Street. It's going to look really pretty for the people after the curve of Chapel Street. What's that guy's name? Mark Watt? I don't know. It's going to look really pretty for you right across the street. It's really going to be beautiful, but the 3 people that live on the backside, it's a nightmare. And the sale of the building, the community really wasn't informed much of what was going on. The 3 bids were in, and then you said, okay, it's up to Frankfurt now. And Kincaid couldn't get it because they weren't as high as you. And then you were going to put this, it was supposed to be for seniors, and now it's not being for seniors. I thought seniors would be really good in there, it would be good. There's an elevator.
So did I.
There's an elevator.
That would
But
be
as
great.
far as rehab, we already got Elizabeth, we don't need more like
No. That was-
this is good, but you gotta rezone, there's too much going on. I don't know, I just don't know, but if you'd like to buy my house, you can. I would like.
Mine
Talk later.
too.
Yes, because I know you already bought some, somebody did on Chapel Street.
I did.
Yes, buy mine too, give me a good, I would be more than happy. And then, I mean, if you borrow two, or else then you can expand it.
Maybe you could do something.
Yeah, because I am not in the flood, my house did not flood, I am, I am.
Thank you.
Thank you,
I'd like to say I appreciate the opportunity to answer
I'm
the
sorry.
questions.
Yes.
I would. I'm Jackie Stevens. I live on 503 Main, facing Main Street. I think it's an excellent income resource for Falmouth, for Pendleton County, depending on who works. I really like, I saw her pictures. Wish I had some, but I think it's great. I haven't heard anybody really say anything about the sewage situation and the water situation as far as, I know the city of Falmouth has a lot of problem with that at certain places. Is that going to be taken care of, or, you know? I don't care who answers. You want to buy my house?
You're really trying to sell your house.
If you want to trade, we're gonna- But, the sewer and water, it will be addressed, through stage 2 development. We offered out departmental, comments before the meeting tonight. The departments didn't respond back as far as utilities, but we have the plans in place and we know the situation. The utilities will handle, what this plan entails as far as that goes. The biggest upgrade as far as utility need for a plan like this is the stormwater runoff situation. The bioswale and the reuse of water, actually, this type of development would take care of that a lot better than other types of commercial developments would. So, we'll get the stormwater report in before they develop. There's no way you'll have any more stormwater than you had previously. There's even a chance they're reusing anything like that. You might even have less coming off the property than you had before. But the sewage and the water, we have adequate infrastructure there to handle it. We actually have adequate fire hydrants and pressure and things are there. And the school is there, so it's actually set up pretty well. So.
Is that fire hydrant work there?
Please,
The fire hydrant there, man?
it's hard to know this.
What colors?
I'm glad to do that.
You painted the top, and if it's a certain color versus a different color. They did that about 3 years ago.
Different color.
The other concern I have is, I was told that there'll be a fence,
Privacy fence?
privacy fence. Is that going to still, I didn't see it in the pictures, that's why I was asking.
Well, I mean, it's an aerial photo, so it's really just that line above there. That's the
Okay.
fence.
And so that, now, the only thing I'm concerned about, and I'm gonna say that y'all probably already checked that, but pulling out of my driveway on the main street, you cannot see anything coming from the lake. What will be the sight from the road, or coming out that way? Will I be able to see to pull out of my driveway unless you buy my house? Will I be able to see pulling out of my driveway going that way? Derek, our house is right up above the fence.
Yeah, I don't think there's any fence on that side. Well,
It's not, it won't be
confused
coming
where we're-
down to that area?
Just along,
This area right here is on the plan.
Maybe we did.
Yeah, those are,
Yeah, where the chain link fence is now would be where that the fence would be going.
yeah, there's an area you're looking at in the pictures right here going up the street.
Well, we're in that corner, the triangle, but that's why I'm concerned, will we be able to see pulling out of that driveway, going
There's
back?
been a lot of accidents.
That's right here.
We definitely reduce that, that's just a zoning that we're complying with, so, that could be taken back or not.
Well, that was my only concern, is that I can't
So
see
the fence
coming
is the
this way.
zoning requirement is basically what we're saying.
Right.
So we could happily not put the fence up, but then that's a zoning requirement you would have to waive for us.
Yeah. Well, I was just concerned, I can't see this way, I'd love to be able to see one of the ways. Like, you know, if I go see it, I wanna watch it come, you know?
No, that's a good point, yeah.
That's the only thing, that's my main concern.
Without
about the fence.
visualizing it, I don't know that I can answer that.
Yeah, that's my main concern about the fence enforcement.
And it's just a 6 foot high.
Is there gonna be a lot of excavating there? This may sound like a stupid question.
Not excavating is like digging, I mean, we're digging holes to bury those tanks, but then we're filling them back in, you know.
The reason I ask is because, no, what company came, the gas company? Duke came and dug those through your yard area there, and now my part of the yard's sinking somewhat from where they dug through there. So I'm concerned that with me being on the hill, where am I gonna be sitting on your greenhouse somewhere along the way?
I hope
If you
not.
don't buy my house. So,
I don't
mean,
think there
that's,
should be
and
any
that's a
excavation
concern
issues.
that I have too, because if you're digging downhill, it's gotta come from somewhere or something, you know what I'm saying?
That falls back into the water flow and storm drains, and so that's all being calculated and managed. I don't think we should have any.
Yeah, there's no excavation or on the top of the greenhouse. Like there's most of the grades are gonna remain the same.
We're not changing too much grading at all.
Okay, I'm done. Did I tell you my name?
Yeah, I got Jackie.
EH? Thank you.
Okay, does anyone else wish to speak at this time?
To bring some, my name is Shayna Johnson, by the way. To bring some comfort to the community who is very unfamiliar with this type of plan, what are current websites that we can refer to get some information about what's going on right now with the ones that are already running?
Is there any way to play like a YouTube video or something? Do we have internet access? Just to give you guys a rundown on. Well, we could do that right now.
What we can do is we can get URLs with websites and
Yes, that's
associated
correct.
companies. We can do that and then provide those. That
Yeah,
would be,
okay.
because what I'm concerned about, we're gonna run out of time for all the comments.
Yeah, there's absolutely 7,
Okay.
so that's not a problem.
Okay, thank you. I live a block around the block, I guess. So my concern is the waste, which she addressed somewhat. Stormwater waste, but also, solid waste. Where would that go? I didn't see anything on the bill. I mean,
So there was no intention of, you always have vegetative waste when you're growing. I mean,
Sure.
there was no intention of storing vegetative waste on site. That would be composted off the site because the very reason the gentleman brought up. I mean, anytime you have vegetative waste, it's going to degenerate and that's going to produce odor. So you don't ever want a compost pile in a city. So that would be off site.
Yes, okay. Because I'm not a farmer, and I'm not familiar with organic pest control. And so I was worried about that too, because mosquitoes are kind of bad already in that area, particularly with the water, the standing water. So I was just wondering about other types of pests that will be coming in because of the...
Well, it's all indoor farming, so you're not going to have a significant amount of increased pest activity. It's indoor. And again, we're an organic farm, which means you have to have a biodiversity plan, which means that compost has to be turned into a legitimate, has to have a full life cycle. So the idea of taking it outside, getting a life cycle, we turn it into a compost situation and sell that. I mean, that would eventually be a side product. That was never intended to be on site.
And my last concern is the noise level. If the community, at 4 o'clock in the morning, I have to work. So at 4 o'clock in the morning, I don't want to be woken up by trucks beeping while they're backing up and traffic coming. So if the noise level does become a problem with the community, how will that be resolved, down the road? I mean, it sounds great. I'm for this project, I really am, but in reality, we have to live there. We're the ones living there. We're the ones going to have to deal with this down the road.
I don't know how loud one idling truck might be, but that, again, that's part of the landscape plan, is to create this boundary. And so that sound should, be diffused, not where, one idling vehicle. I don't think you're going to recognize that inside your house personally, but, it shouldn't be, in my mind, I would think that's an issue, you know.
Okay, so this time we can ask for if anyone else wants to speak. I also want to say if an issue that you guys have or a concern you have is already being addressed, if we just pick a new issue so that we give everyone a chance to speak. Would you like to speak next? So,
My name is David Markwood. I have a few questions. I live in the property. They're in the sharp curve, off of Main. You said something about the economic value. What's it gonna do to the value of our properties, the surrounding property? How much effect is it gonna have on us? So I'm 53 years old, 10 years, 12 years, I'm looking retired. I might decide I want to sell my house. What is an agricultural farm right across the street from my house and the property value of my house? And I know we're talking future, just like the future of this, I figure, I get that. But right now, how much is that gonna drop the value of our property as well as everybody else's?
So if you're looking at comping properties around the area, and Jim and I were just talking about this a little earlier, there's plenty of studies. It's considered a vacant blight property right now. So if you're comping that compared to an active redeveloped property, what were we saying?
The estimate would be 10 to 15% increased value, and part of that's got to do with job creation. The more people you're basically with a community that are employed, they're looking for housing. I mean, it brings people back into the community for housing. It's an economic driver. It's not the deterrent, it's a driver. And
So from previous studies, 10 to 15% increase in value.
this is, I mean, again, this is not an unusual situation that's happening here. This is happening all over. Cincinnati just got an investment, Hamilton and Ohio just got an investment of $40 million to build this, I mean, on a bigger scale. And believe me, the city of Hamilton is very excited about it because it's going to drive jobs in and drive housing up. This is going to drive housing values up, not down.
In the city of Hamilton, is it located in the city limits next to house, residential areas, or is it out in the industrial?
I'm familiar with many of these farms that are near residential areas, yes.
I'm not totally against your plan. I mean, jobs, business, that's fine. I get that.
Yeah,
My concern is the fact that you're bringing in commercial, first of all. Has it been decided whether or not the zone's been changed now?
no.
Yes or no? It hasn't?
Not yet.
Okay. Secondly, talking about the water. As I said, I live right there in that curve. On any given day, a decent rain puts 6 feet of water out into that road line. You're all talking about retaining the water. How are you all going to be able to retain water that's coming down off the driveways out into the street that runs along the street that you're talking about with the curb? How is it going to come into play? And a lot of the water runoff comes from the ground, the lane where your farmer's market is, that side of the building, comes down to the roadway, and down in front of where Mr. Moreland lives, comes down that curve, crosses the road. There's a drain right next to my driveway. Well, it's 10 feet away from my driveway. It don't take in any water to mount anything. Most of the water flows down through the roadway. When there's a good rain, I had 2 inches of water come across my driveway. And you're all talking about putting a curve around that, across the street from me. I don't see how you're going to keep that water inside of that. To me, it's going to put more water on the outside of it.
The site will be regraded to drain internally to the catch basins that are on the site itself. So the whole idea is, right now what's happening is you have basically the hill, the site is all kind of going away from the school. So the rain falls on it, all the rolls off the hill down to the street. So because we're going to create these kind of plateaus internally with curbs, we'll then be able to drain internally in there and catch all that water. And the idea is it's all going to get caught before it even gets to the perimeter. So you theoretically should see a lot less runoff than you can see now because we're able to catch it. Whereas right now, there's no place to catch it or put it.
So like right now, if you go over and look, probably most of it right on, because it got 51 degrees today, but there's actually cold water inside my yard. I mean, it's not my property, it's the neighbor's property.
Sure.
I keep that motor on that side of the street. Next question. The industrial park is just a mile outside of town. Why wasn't that considered to be a
go ahead. It had to do with the building, it had to do with the school, it had to do with the concept of putting that, had to do with education in school. I mean, that's the whole thing. It's, I don't know how does, anyone who's a farmer in here, can you kind of share what's going on with farmers as far as how quickly we're losing farmers in this country? So, I mean, part of this has got to do with, we're trying to create an environment where kids understand farming and we get farmers back. If we don't do something about farming in this country, we're all in trouble. That's just a fact. And this is a way to get education, get kids in. It's a STEM project. It teaches science, technology, education. So the school, and we actually thought it was a cool thing because of Falmouth, because a lot of the kids that we're going to get in here, honestly, as crazy as it sounds, have never seen a small community. A lot of these kids that are going to be coming in from these schools have never seen a small community and what a community is all about. They live in urban areas and they don't know where food's grown. So the idea was to integrate. I mean, that's the whole purpose behind it. So it's not that this is a convenient spot, it's an inconvenient spot. Honestly, this is a very inconvenient spot for us. We're doing it because we felt it was the right place to put this program in, and we thought it would do a good thing for the community. So, I mean, again, there's a reason behind it.
An industrial center outside of town completely detracts from our entire goal of tourism and education.
We would not have been looking at Falmouth if we were looking at an industrial
Yeah,
center.
I would have looked at like an old abandoned Kmart or Sears building or Toys R Us. That would be a much, much more ideal location to grow. But the fact that this is in a school building, it's more difficult for us to even incorporate what we need to do. But it's the adaptive reuse of renovating an historic school building. It's the thought of the education and the tourism. So it's the concept that makes it attractive because it's a school. Of course, an industrial location would be better, easier for us and whatnot, but that's not what we're trying to, that takes away from the
Did you
whole
all
vision.
approach the city or the county before you all purchased the building to talk about the industry itself? I mean, if it's an industry, why wouldn't that be pointed more towards the industrial park? I mean, I get the school and the concept of
That's just
learning.
it's just part of the concept. That's why.
Did you all address the county or the city about this before you bought the building? So now you bought the building, so your one zone changes to a commercial zoning. So therefore, it's easier to ask for forgiveness of this permission. Correct? Because you've already bought the building, you've already invested money, so now it's a matter of the people saying, okay, go ahead and do it. See my point?
Not really.
You've already bought the building, so everybody feels sorry.
Well, the building was purchased for a different purpose.
Because you already spent money on the building.
The building was
But instead of
actually
putting it out here-
purchased for senior housing.
Instead of putting it out here in the industrial park, where the industry should be, you're gonna put it right in the middle of town, right in my front yard. I spend a lot of time out in my front porch in the summer. I mean,
So now you're gonna
what
have
kind
to
of
go
noise?
park like the setting.
What kind of noise is the fan we put off the greenhouse? I sleep with my windows open a lot through the summertime. I spend a lot of time on my front porch. I mean, what kind of noise and stuff am I gonna have?
Should be.
I mean, you're talking, the trucks coming in and out, your main drag, more like that from the house. Right now, there's not a curb on either side of the road, but yet people still manage to drive my yard. And if we're gonna put a curb on that side, where everybody comes through splashing water now, and keeps washing it out, now we're gonna force it even more into my yard, because we've got a truck coming around the curb at the same time the cars are going. I do a lot. I stop instead of going through the big water hole, so that the car doesn't have to go over into my yard and tear up the yard. Because I like my place too, so.
Do you have any other questions? Okay, thank you, sir.
We're at team. So, my name is Lindy Huffman, and I'm the county agriculture agent, and as such, I serve as market manager for the local farmers market. So, a few statements first. Agricultural enrollments are an all-time high at universities, and women are actually leading agricultural enrollment. So, people are coming back because of innovations but also traditional agriculture as well. So this community is obviously well versed in agricultural heritage and history, and it is true that we have seen a lot of farm consolidations. However, agricultural production is not declining. I would actually say that it is somewhat increasing in our community, maybe not on traditional large scale, but through diversification. So we have 5 farmers market members in this room. The farmers market in our local community has been a backbone since the 1980s. We create community over competition. So farmers markets that you go to in other parts of the state, if I'm out of corn, I would say, hey, I'm out of corn, see you next week. But at our farmers market, we say, hey, I'm out of corn, but go see Sarah at the farmers market, because we create this sense of community and pride. Over the past 7 years, we've grown from 3 vendors up to 16, and we're on point to go to 20 vendors this year. We've been doing fundraising efforts for the last few years for farmers market, and while we appreciate you including us in the plan, we would have loved to have included even further on in the discussion, as this process has been on the books for over a year and a half. And I know that I would love to have been contacted, as well as any other members of the farmers market, on behalf. So Ag Careers, I'm actually going to do career counseling at the middle school this week for agricultural careers to talk about all the different hats. My presentation isn't just about traditional farming where kids say, well, I just want to grow up to be a farmer. I say, well, how are your math scores? How are your chemistry scores? Farmers don't do that. Well, absolutely they do, because it doesn't matter if you're a 76-year-old man and you're making amendments to your soil. That's chemistry at its finest, in its most basic form. So, Ag Careers are on the rise. Involvement in school or food processing, that's an agricultural career. Chefs are utilizing local products. So as far as the production, there's definitely a lot of opportunity, right? Is it going to affect our local food economy? Maybe not so much, because we're a food desert. We drive over 10 miles, over 35% of our population drives over 10 miles to go to the grocery store. That constitutes us as a food desert. So I would love to see even more fresh produce make its way here, but not compete with any of our local farmers who all currently work full-time jobs outside, but are working and on the track to get full-time farm employment through our farm.